Hello everyone and welcome to my podcast. You're listening to Seraphina Speaks Little Girl, Big Questions. The show that delivers you my take on topics that are important. I'm your host, Seraphina Marlena Durbin. Let's go right ahead to the show.
Well, hello listeners, it's been quite the while since you've heard from me. Why don't I update you on the changes here at Seraphina Speaks? One thing's obvious. I started hosting my podcast when I was 7, but now I'm 9 years old. Let's be honest, there's quite a difference between those ages. And a hell of a lot happened in this past year. The pandemic, for one, went on and on and on forever. And for so many of us, it changed our lives. There's also vicious wars going on. I'm trying to get my head around why top dogs in Russia are doing what they're doing. And then Uncle Kyle, my godfather, died. There's a lot of pain about, and the world is in a bit of a mess. In my own small world, there's been some big changes. My family moved to a home surrounded by fields and sheep. This was a huge move across the UK, only a few months after I became home educated full-time. I don't mind sharing with you that being in lockdown showed just how much support I needed because of my dyslexia. I was struggling. So Mummy set a goal to find ways to help me read. And once we unpacked all the boxes, we got stuck into my reading. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I found it tough to keep going because my dyslexia doesn't work with phonics at all, and Mummy had to toss this method aside. I can report at the end of 2021, I began making headway, and now I'm able to pick up ordinary kids' books and read. It will take a while to catch up, but determination is something I've got a lot of. As an aside, I've planned to do an interview series with successful people with dyslexia. Then I realised it was all too much. To move house, to get stuck right into home ed, and do the dyslexia interviews. Listen out for this special series, which will come at some point, because I do plan to do this once I'm back into the swing of podcast things. Listeners, I think that's probably enough of my update. Today is about the Queen's Jubilee. And I thought I would share not only about this, but also the very first episode I ever recorded. And yes, it was about the Queen. Of the first weekend of June here in the UK, we'll be celebrating the fact that Queen Elizabeth has been Queen for 70 years. That's 844 months, and that's a lot of months in my book. Let me tell you what a Jubilee is. It's a special celebration for a king or queen's reign. They're about how long a monarch has ruled. For instance, a silver jubilee is celebrated after 25 years, a golden jubilee for 50 years, a diamond jubilee for 60 years, a sapphire jubilee for 65 years, and finally, a platinum jubilee is for 70 years. Isn't it a miracle that our Queen has been sitting on her throne for 70 years? Here's the first episode I ever made about the Queen. Let me know what you think, would you? And remember, I was 7 when I recorded this.
Hello people and welcome to my podcast. My name is Seraphina Marlena Durbin and the name of my show is Seraphina Speaks Little Girl, Big Questions. I cannot tell you how excited I am. Today is episode 1. I have a very, very special person to discuss with you, and that is Her Royal Highness, the Queen of England. Everybody knows the Queen. Do you know the Queen? I like to know the Queen, and I have lots of questions about her. Bear with me because I think I'm going to talk to you about the Queen. Bear with me, people. Bear with me. I'm looking at Google pictures of the Queen, and I'm noticing she's wearing a lot of bright, lovely colours. I wonder if her pyjamas are just as fantastic as her suits. I recommend looking at Google at her beautiful clothes. I'd like to give a couple of tips to the Queen, if I may. I would like the Queen to know we should have chocolate Mondays and chocolate Fridays where there's only people where they only eat chocolate. And please, Your Majesty, just please. That's a little frivolous. There's some things more important in life. I have noticed on the streets there are people in new homes, and I'm sure the Queen cares very much about these people. I suggest the Queen should open up Buckingham Palace. I have a quick question you should ask your family about. What will happen to the Queen after Brexit? I am now looking at a picture of the Queen driving a car. You can look at this picture too if you check out my show notes. What strikes me is the Queen is a very independent woman. I am an independent woman too. Do you think the Queen is feminist? Because I am. You notice in this picture she is wearing a very fetching headscarf. To be honest, what she's wearing doesn't matter. She's a busy woman that has things to do, like running the country. If Your Majesty, you're listening to this, I'm a big fan. If you've been inspired by this podcast, I'd love to hear from you. You'll find my email in the show notes. Perhaps you would like to do some Queen-inspired artwork or write a story of Her Majesty. Whatever you do, make sure you let me know if you enjoyed this episode. I'm looking forward for our next episode with you. Bye everybody, thanks for listening.
Listeners, whatever you do over the Jubilee weekend, whether you celebrate the Queen or not, let's chink our glasses to her as a legend. Anyway, that's it for today. Don't forget, if you like this podcast, subscribe, and please tell your friends about Seraphina Speaks. See you next time, everyone. Bye!
Wow, I hope you enjoyed the show, everybody. If you like what you hear, click the subscribe button. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. Don't forget to check the show notes. Leave me a review wherever you listen to your podcasts, because then more people can find my podcast.